The gravity well was impassable. Humans used it as a catapult. For human spaceman adept at operating the coordination of space and time, it became launch pads, which were powerful enough to trap an entire fleet. The tactical display made Capt. Elena Vasquez hyperventilate and go cold. Nobody else aboard knew why she was more frozen to her command pod than the glassed-in square of stars, linked outside 2 kilometers beyond transparent. Aluminum. She glanced at the readouts again. 3 Catherian dreadnoughts hung motionless before them, their hulls twisted into impossible shapes. They were trapped on one side of the navigation computers, simply labeled Anomaly 77 Alpha, a gravity well measuring 12,000 kilometers across that had eaten 17 ships over past month alone. Anomaly status report from Commander Hayes, Alana said, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. Alana's second-in-command, CDR, Marcus Hayes, was hurrying around the workstations with efficient haste. To do so, he had to get that weather-beaten face. These scars seemed deeper than usual. The Catherian fleet lost attack formation about 6 hours ago. When they moved into this position, they hit the event horizon of the anomaly. For them, only minutes have passed. Now all 3 ships are hard tens of years dilated. Alana nodded grimly. The Catherians had been the primary adversary of humanity for over 2 centuries now. Ever since first contact had gone so wrong, their technology was superior in almost every way, their ships faster, their weapons more powerful. The only thing that kept humanity even remotely in the fight was unpredictability and what the Catherians called humanity's dangerous creativity. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the navigation console. Sarah was young, barely 20, but she had a mind for spatial mathematics that made veteran navigators weep with envy. "There is something strange about the anomaly's gravitational signature. Lieutenant, please tell me the details of something strange." Sarah's fingers skated over her console, producing 3-dimensional models that hurt the eyes to look at. The distortion is irregular. There are ... currents, tangles of twisted space and time that flow inward toward the central mass, but do not stop there. They loop back on themselves, so the result looks just like a closed circuit. Alina rose and went over to the navigation station. The holographic display showed the anomaly as a twisting vortex of twisted light and space-bent gravitational fields. The trapped Catherian ships were visible as red dots at various points all around that shape, their hulls contorted by tidal forces into shapes which, if they had not been made of advanced space-age materials, would have been instantly torn to pieces. "They are not only intact," Alina asked. "The materials they use in their hulls," Marcus returned, checking his own displays. "According to our information, these beings have a resistant matter which is capable of withstanding extreme gravitational stresses. This is the same technology that makes it damn near impossible to kill one of their ships." Alina studied the display closely for several minutes before she moved on. The slow ballet of distorting space-time nagged at her subconsciously, but the pattern seemed somehow familiar. Hardly ever had Alina been the best student, but a lifetime of people telling you you're stupid sometimes results in having a knack for seeing connections that others don't. "Sarah, project the debris field's velocity vectors for me." "Which debris?" "Field, Captain." "Every one of them," Sarah said very steadily. "All of the ships that have been lost this year to the anomaly." New points of data sprang up on her console display. Each one represented the final flight path of a vessel headed for destruction. Most showed the expected death spiral, ships drawn toward the center of the anomaly. But some vectors were different. They curved away from that central mass and followed the same spiral pattern as the space-time flows Sarah had detected. "My God," Alina said, in a voice little higher than a whisper, "it's not just gravity well, it's gravity river. A treasure that's not been disturbed in 200 years." She said quietly, almost to herself, as if trying to convince herself of something. "Captain." Marcus looked puzzled. Alina turned around to face her bridge crew. The burden of command lay heavily on her shoulders, but this time something lifted from her mind other than despair. The anomaly isn't destroying everything it catches, it's sorting it. Some objects are pulled to the center, but others get caught in the currents and thrown out with high speed. She pointed to the display, following with her finger one of those curved trajectories. "Look at the vector from here, the debris of the merchant vessel Prosperity. It has not been crushed. It has been accelerated to point at 7 light speed and ejected through this spiral arm," as she ran calculations. Sarah's eyes grew wide. "Captain, if we could predict which current we would be caught by, and if we could survive the acceleration, we could use the anomaly as a slingshot," Alina finished for her. "The only question is whether our ship can withstand the forces necessary to accelerate to near light speed." Dr. Rebecca Torres, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from her station. Alina had been with Rebecca for 5 years, ever since they both were assigned to the experimental Corvette program. She was brilliant, practical, and there had yet to be a problem too large that she couldn't solve in life when given time and coffee. Although the structural integration fields will cope, we'll have to tweak the inertial dampers and be certain which course to follow. Get it wrong by even a few degrees, and we're like those Catherian ships trapped in a time loop. Their life support collapsed. Alina looked back at the tactical display. The 3 enemy dreadnoughts hung there like flies. In amber, their crews, seeing time go by as slowly as cream, while the rest of the universe aged unreasonably. It was a terrible fate, but if looked at the right way, perhaps something not entirely to be sniffed at. "How long to make the modifications?" she asked. Rebecca did some quick, mental arithmetic. "At least 6 hours. Maybe 8 if we run into trouble. Get on it," Alina ordered. "But don't make a sound about it. Until we're good and ready to run a trial, the Admiralty are not to get a whiff of what's going on." Marcus moved closer to her, lowering his voice. "Alina, this is insanity. Even if we manage to fly at near light speed, we'll have no way to slow down until we pass through another gravity well. We could wind up anywhere in the galaxy." It was the first time Alina had smiled for weeks. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Marcus, we're facing an enemy that outguns us 10-1. In 72 hours at the outside, those reinforcements will come, and when they do, this entire system falls. Insanity might be what we're after." Through the next 8 hours, however, I had more reason, LJN, other times, which I could not now remember, on its complete revolution around the planet. Rebecca and her engineers spent the night accomplishing at least one significant modification, rewiring with new dense conductors. Both ships' inertial systems. They went one step further by installing a PowerPoint array alongside the hull to stabilize structural integrity networks. Not some esoteric mass-market product yet, but something significantly faster than its predecessors. Sarah, meanwhile, ran simulation after simulation and watched the currents of the anomaly slowly take shape with greater and greater precision. Precision was everything here. If even 0.1% of their calculations was off, it would send them into some such current, one where they would be trapped like Catherians, or else their ship could be shattered with unbearable acceleration. The lesson of Nakatro had not been lost on them. Alina nearly didn't sleep at all, running from department to department, monitoring modifications, because the crew worked straight through even small breaks in food or entertainment like people, who know every detail counts as much towards their survival or demise as the other 89 million cubic kilometers of water pressing them in without complaint, without muss or fuss, and certainly not one question about what kind of lunacy plot this might be. They trusted her. The trust was both encouraging and unnerving. Commander Jake Morrison, the ship's tactical officer, stood by Alina during what passed for the night shift. Young, steady, reliable, Jake did not lose his head in battle. His presence beside her had taken her through more fights than it was pleasant to recall. "Captain, I've been thinking about our exit strategy," he said. "Even if we manage to navigate the anomaly, we'll exit traveling at near light speed. How do we slow down enough to do anything useful?" Alina had been turning the same problem over in her mind. "We'll look for a second anomaly, something gravity-assisted that we can use to decelerate. If we haven't been too out of line, then we go as far as we can, or we'll think of some way to slow down the way everybody else does it." Jake could hear the anxiety beneath Alina's calm tone. "It's not about getting back alive, Jake. It's about informing the fleet. Catharians have got a flaw we never knew existed. Their vessels are confined by gravity wells. If we can pass that nugget to Admiral Harrison, she can use it to turn the tide of this war." Jake nodded slowly. The crew should know the risk. "Do," Alina answered. Everybody on this ship knew they could never make it back home. Rebecca reported at 0600 hours ship time that the modifications had been finished. The inertial dampeners could now deal with accelerations of as much as 15,000 Gs. The structural integrity field generators had been overdriven and tied across the main reactor to maximize protection. It was as good as they could get with their limited time and resources. The closing figures came from Sarah to the senior staff. Their trajectory, shown on a holographic display, would lead them straight through the anomaly, laboriously charted so as to bring them into the outer spiral current at 87% of light speed. The margin for error was terrifyingly small. In 37 minutes, the window opens. Sarah took the chance to remind her comrades. Rotation of the anomaly will align the best current with our approach vector for a mere 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Miss it, and we'll have to wait another 6 hours for another chance. At the conference table, Alina looked at her senior staff. On different occasions, these people had been through things that looked impossible, yet ended up okay. And maybe that made all the difference. To ask them to take the leap of faith which she was proposing defied every rule regarding safe navigation that they had ever learned. "Final check," she said. "Rebecca, can that modification hold up?" "All systems green, Captain. The ship's holding together." "Sarah, are you sure about our navigation solution?" "As sure as ever I can be with an anomaly we don't fully understand. But the math checks out." "Jake, tactical status. All weapons systems secured for high G acceleration. If we appear near hostile targets, say after 10 years at high altitudes, it would take a few minutes to bring weapons online." "Marcus, crew status. Everyone's tied in and ready. They know it's a one-way trip." Alina rose, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar mantle. "Then let's make history." When she resumed her place in the command chair, the bridge was as silent as the grave. The tactical display on all screens showed their ship, a tiny piece of human engineering. about to pit itself against fundamental natural forces. The three Catherian dreadnoughts were still motionless in their opium prison, unaware that their ancient foe was about to turn the tables. "All stations report ready," said Marcus. Alina sent a meaningful look at Sarah. "Escort us in, Lieutenant." Quiet as Santa Claus, the ship began to ease forward. Its engines provided just enough push to overcome how much energy it had naturally stored up by orbiting the primary star in this system. They didn't need high speed for their initial approach. Anyway, the acceleration would come from that anomaly they were headed towards very shortly. All one might hope is not to fry too fast. The closer they got to the event horizon, the more the ship's sensors began registering the effects of gravitational distortion. Space itself was twisted and conventional navigation out of the question. Sarah had nothing to rely on but her mathematical models and pure intuition to know which current pointed in the correct direction. "Gravitational stress increasing," reported Rebecca. "Hull integrity holding steady." "Temporal distortion detected," said the science officer, "being time dilation effect." Alina stared at the main display as the stars began to shift and blur. Visual distortions made it impossible to judge the ship's position. Blindly, they flew into a maze of twisted space-time, trusting their lives to math and Sarah's eerie spatial orientation. "Current detected," Sarah announced, her voice taut with concentration, trajectory being adjusted to match flow vector. The ship shuddered as they entered the outer spiral of the anomaly. Alina felt forces beyond human comprehension exert their power on her body, pressing it back into her chair. The structural integrity fields held, but the hull was creaking under stresses no ship built on Earth had ever been meant to endure. "Acceleration will have reached 2000 G and is still rising," Rebecca said. "Inertial dampeners are compensating." The main display was suddenly a chaos of distorted light and colors that couldn't exist. Alina could see the captured Catherian ships as they darted by in their eternal moment of surprise and terror. For a brief instant, she felt a pang of sympathy for their crews. No one deserved to suffer like that. 6,000 G, reported Rebecca. 8,000 and 10,000. The acceleration built and built, pressing Alina ever more deeply into her chair, in spite of the inertial dampener. Her heartbeat struggled against forces trying to compress her into a singularity. Around the bridge, her crew fought to stay conscious as the universe compressed around them. "All these years I have talked about 12,000 grams. Now it is 14,000 grams. We are going ever higher." Alina could not speak as the incredible acceleration had left her throat muscles paralyzed. The hull creaked and bent around them, the oscillation pattern of its solid and composite construction almost singing. Rebecca's modifications, however, were working. The field generators of structural integrity bore the main part of structural stress, allowing it to be transmitted to ship frame. Then, almost as suddenly, they were out of it. The acceleration terminated, as abruptly as it had begun. Alina gasped back to breath in her chair. The main view was again unobstructed, and with it normal local space restored to normal but filled with unfamiliar stars. In less than 6 minutes they had traveled over 400 light-years by following flows of bent space-time that twisted the universe's strongest force into mankind's mightiest weapon. "Report status," Alina managed to gasp. "All systems functioning." "Normally," announced Rebecca, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We made it, Captain. We really made it." Sarah was already at her navigation console, trying to bring up their bearings. "I'm reading sky patterns consistent with the Vega field. We're about 430 light-years from where we began. Alina felt a mixture of elation and dread. They had shown that the anomaly could be put to use as a weapon. But now they were speeding alone through foreign space with no way to halt. And to make matters worse, they had no notion whether this part of the galaxy contained any other vessels, friendly or otherwise. "Lady and gentlemen," Jake intoned from his station at the tactical display, "the long-range sensors are picking something up. It's huge and not natural." However, the images on the main screen showed an immense structure now hanging alone in space before me. All alien of origin. It was unlike anything in the Catharian database. Curves flowed into geometries of lights that pained the eye to look upon. The entire construction was easily the size of a small moon, and it seemed to be moving under its own power. "Unknown vessel, you are approaching Nexus Station," a voice said from the communication board. It was perfectly accented English, but there was something in the cadence which suggested to both of them that its speaker was not human. "Your speed please reduce, and prepare to reciprocate for scanning." Alina and Marcus exchanged looks. It was not their programmed from planetary science and technology mission, but they had no choice now. Their ship was traveling too fast to change course. Their weapons would not even scratch something the size of that space station. "This is Captain Alina Vasquezov, the Starship Defiant," she answered. "We cannot slow down because of technical limitations. We request assistance in slowing down." There was a long silence before the voice came back. "What an unknown species you are to us, Captain Vasquez, but you crashed it. Most organic species are unable to navigate rivers of gravity at all. We shall give you asylum for the time being in order to find out your intentions." The alien station began to display a strange pulsing energy flux. Alina felt the ship tremble as the flux enveloped it, and she found herself staring in pure astonishment as their velocity started to drop. With whatever technology these aliens were using, it surpassed anything known to human science. "Velocity decreasing," Sarah reported. "Some kind of tractor field being pulled towards the station. See if you can spring us loose somehow." As they closed in for a near look at the monster structure on collision course with them, Alina's attention was caught by docking bays the size of cities. Smaller vessels flitted busily around, the station like bees around a hive. In hue and design, they represented dozens, if not hundreds, of different species or philosophies of spacecraft engineering. This was no simple space station, she saw. This was a galactic crossroads. "You have entered the territory of the Concordance," the voice explained as their ship was deftly guided to a docking bay. "We are Exilines of species dedicated to peaceful exploration and technological exchange. Your arrival via Gravity River suggests that your people have reached a stage of spatial mathematics that earns merit for possible membership. So there was hope for mankind. If the Concordance would let them in, perhaps at last they could begin to crack the Catharian menace. But first they'd have to earn their stay by sharing what they knew about the gravity wells that the enemy so adroitly turned into traps. The docking process was like nothing Alina had ever experienced before. Instead of mechanical clamps and umbilicals, the alien technology snaked around their ship like mercury, forming an airtight seal without so much as a visible moving part. In minutes, they had artificial gravity and atmosphere in the docking bay. "Captain," Marcus said quietly, "we must be cautious about what we let them know. It could be an opportunity, but it may also be a trap." Alina nodded, agreed. "We let them know only what we must in order to obtain their help. Our primary mission remains getting information back to Earth." The airlock shifted, and suddenly, Alina found herself face to face with a non-human, intelligent species for the first time. The alien was very tall and gaunt. Its facial features were almost human, except for a subtle sense of wrongness about them. The translucency of its skin displayed networks of phosphorescent veins beneath the surface, and its eyes were large, multifaceted, like an insect's. "I'm Coordinator Vex," the alien said, with a voice full of harmonics that hinted of many vocal chords. "I welcome you to Nexus Station on behalf of the Concordance. Your coming has generated great interest among our scientific community." Alina stepped forward, trying to show confidence in themselves, despite their desperate situation. "Thank you, Coordinator Vex. We are honored by your welcome. However, I must be frank about our situation. We are refugees from a war which threatens our entire species. We had to use the Gravity River. We had no other choice." Vex's multifaceted eyes seemed to glint with interest. "A war, against whom?" "A species called the Catherians. They are belligerent, expansionist, and technologically superior to us in nearly every way. We stumbled upon the Gravity River effect while trying to escape one of their fleets." For a long moment Vex was silent, and Alina could tell other aliens were gathering in the background. Some were humanoid, others so alien that her mind struggled to comprehend their shapes. But all of them seemed riveted by the conversation. The Catherians' Vex's voice was thoughtful. "Yes, we know about them. They have been pushing at the outer boundaries of concordant space for several decades. We were starting to wonder when human beings would finally block their expansion." Alina felt a surge of excitement. "So, you'll help us?" "Perhaps," Vex replied. "But first, you must show that your species has something to offer the Concordance. Your manipulation of gravity rivers is impressive, but we need to demonstrate that. Humans can add new knowledge to our class." Over the next several hours, Alina and her crew were given a tour of Nexus Station that left them speechless. The technology on display made even Catherian advances seem primitive. Concordance aliens had not only mastered gravity manipulation as easily and predictably as most people breathe air, but also how to slow down time continuum, fold extra dimensions, and convert energy into matter at scales that defied human comprehension. But what struck Alina most was the spirit of cooperation she saw all around her. Species having been enemies for eons were working together on projects that benefited everyone, the weak and strong alike. The Concordance wasn't just a military alliance. It was an earnest effort at creating a peaceful, cooperative galactic society. "Your ship's modifications are very clever," commented Dr. Zara, a scientist from a race she called the She was studying their journey along the Gravity River with obvious interest. "We've used similar techniques for transportation, but never in combat. The tactical possibilities are substantial." Alina chose her words carefully. "We were forced to learn. The Catherians had us surrounded, and we ran out of options. We had to find a way, escape, that they wouldn't expect." "And did you indeed manage to escape?" asked another scientist, a crystalline being whose thoughts seemed to take vivid form on the surface through flowing colored light patterns. "We escaped, yes, but our race is still embroiled in a hopeless war. Catherians have more numbers than us and better equipment. Only we need allies, or at least technology so advanced it would give us a fighting chance." Vex, who had been silently listening to the scientific debate, though finally he spoke. "Our policy in conflicts between two young species is complete no interference. The Concordance made sure to get out. Really, it is quite simple and logical. But if one side shows the potential to threaten galactic stability, we're prepared to alter that stance. As someone who had never left Science Center before now, Alina felt her heart racing. And do the Catherians pose such a threat? Their pattern of expansion indicates they will, in time, come into conflict with the Concordance, Vex stated. It is possible that if humanity is assisted in repelling them now, that it would benefit us later on. The negotiations that followed were complex and delicate. The Concordance was willing to provide humanity with technological assistance, but they wanted assurances that such knowledge wouldn't be used for aggressive expansion. While sitting in a docking bay 400 light-years from Earth, Alina found herself negotiating humanity's first interstellar treaty ever to be negotiated, on habitat other than Terra. Their agreement was simple, yet elegant. The Concordance would give humanity advanced naval techniques and defenses. Automobile for these in isolation from any exchange of technology which does not have a corresponding provision in the treaty. Not inconsequentially have been denied. To the human race, evidentially recovery work with interests of every kind spread stockholders' benefits along a hierarchical chain or spread. EBO of planet Alina and her crew would be given a ship capable of faster-than-light travel without requiring gravity rivers for acceleration. They could return to Earth to announce the alliance and help it open gateways of freedom to the stars, the glorious broken stars of humanity in the galactic neighborhood. The ship the Concordance gave her was like nothing Alina had ever seen. Before, it might not have been as large as the Defiant, but it was far more advanced. Programmable materials made up its exterior, and these could be reconfigured according to need. The engines worked on a principle of physics that Alina could hardly comprehend, bending space-time itself so as to take journeys that the gravity river had made, and which she had taken in just a few minutes. Rest than 5 days' time seemed rather leisurely. "This is your new ship," Vex explained as they toured the vessel. "Think of it as a sign of goodwill. Your aides will take several days to learn the controls. However, the navigation system records all the star routes of known space. You should be able to make Earth within a standard week." Alina gazed about the alien bridge, its flowing organic controls and displays that seemed to partake of thought as much as touch. It was lovely, formidable, and completely intimidating. Now humanity was about to take the first real steps into community with the galactic milieu. She was the one who would have to ensure that they didn't stumble. "The methods of the gravity river that you discovered will be of great interest to our military strategists," Vex said as they prepared to leave. "We would like to set up a training exchange. Some of your people would come here to study advanced navigation. Some of our people would go to Earth for information, your tactical innovations." Alina nodded. "I'll pass that on to my superiors, but I think they'll be very excited, particularly if the new Concordance technology can be spotted." The trip back to Earth was brief, yet for the duration of it, Alina struggled not to be overwhelmed by all that had happened. In less than a fortnight, she had gone from commanding a desperate escape mission to opening the way for humanity to join the stellar community. The burden was daunting, but so was the promise, when they emerged from their last spacefold. Earth's familiar blue globe floated in front of them like a beacon of hope. The solar system looked as it had when they left. Yet everything was about to change. Humanity was now no longer alone in its contest with the Cassinthians' Earth fleet. Command's response quickly made things clear. Only hours after the team was back in their debriefing location, Admiral Harrison herself arrived with a whole staff of scientists, engineers, and tactical experts. General and specific, She related the incidents of their escape through the gravity river and how they had first come into contact with the concordance. "So, you're saying," said Admiral Harrison, sitting back in her chair, "we could use Cytherian gravitational weapons against them." "More than just their weapons," Alina pointed out. "Any major gravity anomaly could potentially be used as a launch system between us. We've identified 17 anomalies within our own territory alone that could serve as military assets." Lady Dr. Amanda Foster, foremost expert in the Earth Empire on exotic physics, was nearly incoherent. "The ramifications extend far beyond military application. If we can manage navigation of gravity rivers, we would be able to explore the galaxy without depending on conventional faster-than-light drives. Within a few months, rather than decades, we would have settlements in distant star systems." The Admiral nodded slowly, "And this concordance agrees to give us some of their more sophisticated technologies. If we prove ourselves fitting partners," Alina said without hesitation. "Their own tactical innovations is something that they are particularly interested in. At one stage in evolutionary development, it seems, species must almost all focus on defense before going over onto the attack. It is unusual that we are inoffensive, too. We will weaponize physics." The next several months were busily spent. Earth's leading scientists worked day and night to understand and duplicate the alterations Elena's team had made on the Defiant. Within 6 months, the first dedicated ships for gravity river sailing were coming out of the shipyards. Their hulls had been strengthened and their inertial systems entirely sheathed from extreme acceleration on the drawing board. At the same time, the war against the Cytherians entered into a wildly different phase. Throughout the human fleets, gravity waves were used in much the way that air is used today's aircraft carriers currently. Small and just then, a Swift-type attack ship would be fired along such an orbit at close to light speed. Such ships were effectively kinetic weapons, relying entirely on their energy from motion or explosions within. Maneuverability to avoid enemy weapons, fire Cytherian technology was all they had ever fought with historically. As the Cytherians confronted a completely unprecedented form of tactics, beating all their understanding, which they encountered for the first time with spoonbenders, something did not go according to plan. After all, didn't blue chinaware dishes invariably only come in one shape, and no more beautiful than that other kin-death Cytherians were completely consumed with arrogance? There was no way they could have been expected to sit cum-faced while they were clobbered around the head. The first major victory occurred in the Battle of Kelpa Station, when a Cytherian fleet took 37 ships and surrounded an Earth colony before adding it to its empire. Instead, they found themselves being attacked from 3 different gravitational rivers. It was the first battlefield system where, technically speaking, all humanity could be said to be involved. Though returning, all differences quickly break apart into a jigsaw puzzle of small that are soon swallowed up by one another and joined back into the mainstream or one of the secondary channels. Alina commanded a gravity river squadron in that battle, and she remembers grimly the sight of once invincible Cytherian dreadnoughts reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. But it was more than military victory. It meant that humanity could adapt, innovate, and survive under nearly insurmountable odds. But the real change came when the first Concordance delegation arrived at Earth. A huge alien spaceship that appeared around Luna was nothing like anything humans had ever seen before, with its hull flickering between dimensions as it moved. This presented humanity's formal entry into an era of contact with all the galactic civilizations. Alina was thrust into the completely new job of being humanity's First ambassador to the Concordance, a task for which she had never been taught, but somehow was naturally cut out. The aliens respected her straightforward manner and her complete will to share knowledge without reservation. More importantly, they agreed in this overwhelmingly adverse condition for life that humans displayed the same desperate ingenuity which had turned a death trap into weapon. The training exchange program proved to be the success everyone hoped. Human navigators learned to fold space and even manipulate time, while Concordance scientists actually found some of their new ideas collided with the tactical physics transparencies of natural instinct. Rennie wanted them to copy, in just 2 years. Joint human-alien crews were exploring parts of space that had never been seen by man or alien alone. Alina stood in the control tower of Nexus Station, a new breed in every possible way, sentenced for 12th junction with Concordance technology. Better than the sum of their parts, these craft combined human innovation and technology that had only been discovered by the Concordance in 5 years. The ships were magnificent, deadly, and like nothing in their category ever known before. Incredible, isn't it? Vex observed upon joining her at the observation window. The alien coordinator, who had become something of her friend during months working together, pointed out enthusiastically what an asset to all mankind this was. Alina laughed, remembering that desperate day when first they had found the Gravity River. We've always been pretty good at making the most out of difficult situations, she thought. Yes, Vex said. That's why the Concordance Council has approved a complete status upgrade for your species. Starting immediately, humanity will hold voting rights and access to all Concordance technologies. Just then, Alina couldn't help feeling sentimental. Full membership in the Concordance meant that humanity would never again face extinction by itself alone. They had allies now, friends among the stars who would back them up against whatever it might be. But there is one more thing, replied Vex. The Council also approved the creation at once of a new joint task force which will carry out an exploration into gravity rivers throughout the galaxy and map them. They want you to lead it. Looking out at the hybrid spaceship floating in space, Alina shook her head and looked back at her extraterrestrial friend. The offer was really tempting, and Vex was so nice, but she had affairs back home. I would be honored, said Alina, but I have obligations to my own people. The position will be centered on Earth, Vex explained, and the task force will be humanity's contribution to Concordance efforts in cosmic exploration. You would have command of ships manned by crew, both human and extraterrestrial. Alina mulled over the offer for quite some time. It would mean giving up her military commission and taking on a role that was partly explorer, partly diplomat, and partly scientist. But it would also be carrying on the work they had begun, pushing out the frontiers of what was possible when creatures from different worlds served together. I'll do it, she said at last, but I'd like my original crew to be the nucleus. We've been through too much together to split up now. Of course, Vex agreed. They have already been cleared for the assignment. As Alina prepared to head back to Earth and start this new chapter of human history, she recalled the journey that had led them this far. They had been refugees without a home, and now ended up sharing an equal partnership with their neighbors, people from the stars. Today, their inventions were changing the shape of future. Stellar society, the gravity river, which had once trapped enemy ships, was now mankind's road to the stars. They had taken the universe's most powerful force and turned it into a tool for exploration, discovery, and hope. It was, Alina thought, the most logical thing in the world. taking something meant to destroy them and using it as a bridge to things that are better. The war with Catharians continued, but it was no longer an issue of survival. This had become a battle between two philosophies: Catharian belief in conquest, through strength, and humanity's belief that cooperation and innovation could overcome anything. The fate of history was settled, with the concordance as allies and gravity rivers as roads. Someone had won Elena's last formal entry in her log. Book now, full screenshot from all sides, simply said, characterization conducted. Man has found its place among the stars, not through violence, but by turning our biggest challenges into even greater opportunities. The gravity well that once seemed insuperable has now become a river for our voyage into the future. And as her ship did the fold up through space for a trip back to Earth, Elena laughed softly to herself. The Catharians had sought to use the universe as their weapon, bending gravitational forces into nets to catch humans in. They had transformed that ability completely. Mankind discovered the keys to galaxy are now firmly in its own hands. Just when you thought all hope was gone, the stars were spread out before them now. No longer remote points or distant marks on the map, but potentials yet to be realized. Central to it all was the lesson that Elena and her crew had learned in those desperate moments at edge of anomaly 77 Alpha. Sometimes, seemingly impossible hurdles are your best springboards to adventure. Humanity had learned to navigate the space-time gravity rivers itself, and the galaxy would never be the same.